What's up, guys, and welcome to the first video of Ghetto Scholars. Ghetto Scholars is an educational platform, and here I'm going to be sharing content related to African people, Black history, Bantu peoples, what's our epistemology, what's our cultural worldview, what's our place in this whole miasma called planet Earth. And with the skills and the knowledge that I have, I'm going to be sharing with you guys as best as I can, to the best of my abilities, the epistemic center of Bantu peoples and who we are. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 200,000 years of Bantu history. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to explain that in 10 minutes. That's right. Hopefully, I can explain 200,000 years of Bantu history in 10 minutes. I'll try my best. We're not going to go into any crazy details. I'll save those for the other videos. Today will just be an overview and a little bit of a gloss over at some of the major events that have happened to Bantu peoples since their inception for a little over 200,000 years. So if you guys are really interested in hearing more of this content, there will be more of these kinds of videos. What I want you guys to do is to hit the bell notification button, subscribe, like, share, do all that needs to be done. Oh, bring the big boys out, of course, because we're going to be bringing the big boys out today and be talking about all that needs to be talked about relating to Bantu peoples. So let's get into this. Who are the Bantu peoples? Who are the Bantu peoples? Where do they come from? What's their epistemology? What's their worldview? So we are told by modern anthropology, which of course is colonial by nature, that Bantu peoples emerged from the BA.NTU regions of West Africa some 2,000 years ago and have since permeated throughout Africa, throughout much of sub-Saharan Africa, synthesizing their culture, synchronizing, synthesizing, and even sometimes displacing indigenous hunter-gatherer African groups. So those would be the Abattoir, or pygmies, as anthropologists would refer to them, and the Khwekam peoples, your Khoisan groups of Southern Africa, who have been living in Southern Africa for more than 70,000 years. So we're going to be talking about the Bantu peoples and how they have brought their own epistemology into the continent, what that has meant for Africa, and what that will mean for Africa moving forward. Because the Bantu peoples are, I'd say, probably the most forceful in terms of they have the biggest voice on the African continent. As Africans, as like contemporary Africans, the Bantu peoples really characterize the bulk of what Africa is. Bantu peoples are typically seen as the stereotypical African. That's the case even when you go to the diaspora, where many of our Bantu descendants ended up going to as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. But today, though, we're going to be looking at a history of the Bantu that stems all the way back into the far reaches of the past. And we're going to be breaking it down, and I'll be giving you guys sources and materials for you to check this information on for yourself and to see how this fits with your own understandings of things. So there's a book written by Zachariah Sitchin. He was an ancient scholar, studied ancient societies, and he studies the Sumerians and the Babylonians, the ancient Babylonians from Mesopotamia. And he studied their culture extensively, and reading Sumerian cuneiform writings, he came with this conclusion that the Bantu peoples, or that the Sumerians, should I say, the Sumerians were worshipping or acknowledged a group of peoples that showed up from the skies, from out of planet. And I'm going to go into a little bit of who these peoples are. Some of you might know them. They are referred to as the Anunas or the Anunnaki. In Zulu, we refer to these peoples as the Amanunu, the Nunus, the others, the weird ones, the ones that are not quite human. So the Nunus or the Anunnakis, they say emerged from their planet Nibiru, and this is in Sumerian form writing that Zachariah Sitchin had helped to decipher and put it into his book, Lost Book of Enki, which I highly recommend you guys reading. It's a fantastic read that goes into the history of really everything and covers a whole bunch. So these folks show up, and there's things happening in their planet, succession disputes happening in their planet. These entities, these are star creatures from planet X, planet Nibiru, which Star Wars calls it planet Naboo, but here, stories for another day. Planet Nibiru is going through a crisis. There's an environmental crisis, there's a political crisis. People are trying to avert the political crisis, but there's this environmental crisis that's happening, and the ruling monarch are saying that, hey, we should pack our bags and go someplace else. We should go to the seventh planet from the sun, the seventh rock from the sun, which is planet Earth. And they commission a bunch of astronauts go under the leadership of Enki, EA, EN dot or E.NKI, Enki. You go to Kenya amongst the Kikuyu peoples, they refer to him as Unkai. Unkai. They refer to this entity as Unkai, and it is a supernatural figure. Unkai or Enki emerges down to earth, and he comes to a place known as the Abzu. And the Abzu really represents modern day Southeast Africa. So that coastline there from Mozambique going down into the Limpopo region and into Natal and whatnot. And Michael Tellinger, who is a archaeologist, historian who's written books, writes a book on this where he talks about footprints, megalithic footprints during the Stone Age period, huge footprints, probably the height of a fully grown person on some of these rocks, and some of these footprints can't be explained. And he posits the theory that these entities came down into Earth and basically grafted the hominids that were living on Earth at the time. And we know that in 2016, 2015, a huge watershed discovery was found by the University of the Witwatersrand in partnership with American anthropologists in finding the Homo naledi bones in the Dinaledi star chamber. And this has really kind of shed light into our story as human beings, where we come from as a humanity. And when you implement ghetto scholarship this is where the ghetto scholarship comes in. When you implement the ghetto scholarship in with the real scholarship that is there, you actually come up with a pretty plausible theory, a pretty plausible analysis on the Bantu peoples, where they come from, who they are, and all that kind of stuff, So the Bantu peoples emerge as a result of genetic engineering. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, holy smokes, what is this brother talking about? Is he on to something right now? No. I know it sounds a little crazy, especially when you've been given the Bible your whole lives, and you've been given this kind of nursery story for adults about this and that. But the archaeological evidence and the ghetto scholars' interpretation through Zachariah Sitchin's work suggests that the Bantus were genetically engineered by the higher-ups who put their essence into the hominids that were living in the region at the time. And you look at the Bible makes this very clear. They clearly state that man was made in the image of the gods. Man was made, they say that man is, I'm making man in my image. So clearly we as human beings have a spark of the divine. We have a spark of the higher ups, And in the book, Enki grafts these human beings, and he creates this prototype of human, and this human being is supposed to serve the higher gods, because of course the higher gods are dealing with their issues on their planet. Their planet is halfway to hell, about to get destroyed. So they are getting their stuff up and running, ready to go. So Enki devises a plan to create these humans. He breaks the laws of his own peoples who are telling him that, hey, you cannot do this. We cannot be genetically engineering clones that look like us, but who aren't us. And Enki's like, no, we can do this because these guys are going to serve us. They're going to be this like slave race for us. They're going to mine this mineral that we need to get it out there. This is all in the book, in Zachariah Sitchin's book. So this is not something that I'm saying. This is something that is out there being said. Also, I know I mentioned that this was going to be a 10-minute video. I just see that it's gone over 10, but let's just keep going, okay? Let's keep going because this stuff is, it's the ghetto scholars, man. It's the ghetto scholars, you know what I mean? Yeah, we'll just keep going here until y'all are just like mind blown completely. That may take us maybe 20 minutes. We don't even know. But hey, let's just keep going here. So, Enki comes in to Earth, hominids, grafting the hominids. Shit's going down in the other planet. Succession disputes. Enki has a half brother, Enlil, who doesn't like that. He's like, yo, you can't be grafting these folks. Blah, 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 blah. Shit happens. There's a huge flood that happens. Oh yeah, right. Big flood happens. So this is pre-diluvial. If y'all are familiar with the pre-diluvial. Pre-diluvial, this is before the floods. There's giants walking all over this planet. There's the sons of God cohabitating with the daughters of man. So these beings are interacting with earth women and they're creating all kinds of different types of looking people. And the Bantus are there, not really as Bantus yet. These are just archaic hominids who have the spark of the divine. And so these folks, then what happens is that these folks get caught up in this huge flood that ends up taking place. This flood then wipes off most of the world population at the time, because obviously back in that time, the population of Earth was not how it was populated today. It was a lot more sparsely populated, so it was pretty cataclysmic, to say the least. Pretty cataclysmic. So people get washed away, all kinds of shit's happening, blah, 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 all of that. Then we now get to our what's known as recorded history. So what we were talking about right now is pre-recorded history, the Bantu peoples getting grafted by the higher-ups, getting grafted by the Anunas, the Anunnakis, who themselves are coming from their own planet that's getting destroyed. And yeah, so now we get to actual documented recorded history, which is now going into your 10,000 BCE, 8,000 BCE. Now we're now moving into the development, and this is what the Bantus would eventually bring into Africa, and this is the science of agriculture. So agriculture begins to develop in Mesopotamia at around 6 to 8,000 BC. So that's around 10 to 12,000 years before present day. So 10 to 12,000 years before present day, the first cities in the world are being built. And they're being built in modern day Iraq, Iran, Mesopotamia. And these societies and these cities would become known as the Babylonian or the Akkadian or the Sumerian societies. And in the Bible, they talk about this. In all the ancient scripts, they talk about this huge Tower of Babel and Nimrod being the son of Cush, who left Africa and who was a skilled hunter, leaving Africa and establishing this huge city. And much of our understandings today of computation, writing, accounting, storing calories so that we can think about other things and not just think about hunting and gathering. Much of it comes from this agricultural revolution that takes place. So the agricultural revolution takes place, and as it takes place, Africa, the indigenous Africans in Africa, begin to now start creating, they get word of this, and then they start creating a society along the Nile River. Of course, we know it as ancient Egypt, ancient Kem, Nubia, Kush, the Kemenu, the Tassetians. They come in and they do all this kind of stuff, and they are inspired by what the Babylonians and the Sumerians are doing, and they get into the whole city building business. They get into the agricultural business. Huge cities are being erected, huge monuments are being erected. People don't have to worry about hunting. People don't have to worry about gathering. People can now plant crops. You can now store calories. You can do all that kind of stuff, which opens you up to doing more things that you wouldn't have been able to do. So they come in. The Bantus are there doing the. These are by the way, these are proto-Bantus. These are the ancestors of the Bantus today. While that's going on, there's a huge ice age that's happening. We'll get into that in another video, but there's an ice age, a Wormian ice age that has happened for about 20,000 years. The folks who got caught up in that ice age are beginning to go through all kinds of genetic changes, genetic thingamajiggies. You know, mans are starting to go pale. People are starting to develop long hair to help with the wind that's blowing on their necks so that they don't freeze to death. People are changing. You're getting folks with like blue eyes. You're getting like redheads and hairy looking peoples. But that's going to be in another discussion, another day, another topic, stories for another day. Today we are talking about the emergence of the Bantus and how they synthesize their information into Africa. So Bantus emerged from synthesization of the higher ups with hominids through cross engineering, through genetic engineering. The Bantus or the proto-Bantus serve as a slave race for the higher ups to do the bidding, to mine various types of precious metals that today are found in Africa, that some of them are not from Africa, they're from asteroids hitting the African continent, hitting Earth, meteorites, all kinds of stuff hitting this planet for some millions of years that this planet has been around. This planet predates all of us. It's been around for quite a long time. So all bunch of stuff have been hitting the planet and everything, causing a lot of these minerals to find their way over here. And you see a lot of the precious rare earth minerals, especially the ones needed to take us to the next stage of our development in terms of space exploration and whatnot. A lot of them are found here. And it makes you wonder as to why is it that Africa has only these mineral resources. So let's move on now with the Bantu. So the Bantu now, what happens is that now something big happens. There's a huge desertification that happens at around this time, around 3000, 6000 BC. This is post-flood. So we all know in science, whenever there's a flooding and it chokes all the soil, what usually happens after that is a drought. So a huge flood happens, engulfs most of the known world at the time, and then this desertification starts happening. We start seeing soil erosion. The soil is eroding. There's deserts forming in areas that used to be teeming with lush land and animals and whatnot. It's now becoming desert. Now you have peoples that are agriculturalists living in the desert, having to figure out now where they're going to take their livestock, where they're going to take their crops, where they're going to take their things. And they find that, hey, there's land down there in the garden that we left. There's like a whole thing over there. So they pack up their stuff and they leave. Some of them stay behind. Some of them leave. They go into West Africa, where they develop some nations there, while others continue staying in the north, trying to do their thing. That's where we now get the whole Egyptian history of the Three Kingdoms period in ancient Egypt and Nubia, where the Bantus are now interacting with the indigenous African peoples, like your Nilotic folks and the Khwekams and your Abatwa peoples. And really, it's a story of peoples trying to find greener pastures, literally finding greener pastures, because there's been desert happening, and so folks are trying to like look for greener pastures with their cows, taking all their stuff and migrating. So on and so forth. As things now roll over, we have new groups coming in to Africa. Folks who were stuck in the Ice Age now coming back in. So you've got your Hyksos. This is now your Hyksos. These are your Caucasians, Indo-Europeans, Greeks, Persians, Romans coming into Africa. And we all know just through general history that this was a period marked by war, marked by conquest, marked by invasions, marked by trade, marked by migratory patterns. So people have been migrating up and down for thousands of years, and the Bantu peoples are caught in this historical continuum, caught in this historical thingamajiggy, you know what I mean? So they migrate. So further migrations happen, and the Bantu peoples now start developing other cultures now that they are in Africa. So now they take this agricultural science, and they also develop a ironsmithing culture. The Bantus are one of the few people in the world that jumped the technology tree from stone to iron, whereas most of the known world at the time were using bronze technology from stone to bronze. The Bantus were, I think, the first humans really on Earth to really do metallurgy at a level that has been unseen, unprecedented. Smithing metal, smithing iron, smithing steel. The Nubians, there's information that says that the Nubians have been smithing steel for a little over 2,000 years. So a whole 1,000 years before even, so thousands of years before medieval Europe and King Arthur and the plated armors, Africans have been smithing and working with metal and iron and steel for a very long time. And there's going to be, and I'll do another video where I talk about iron production, steel production, and metallurgy being a key facet and key component of the Bantu peoples, and how that has characterized Bantu peoples, Bantu culture for thousands of years. So the Bantus then migrate into Africa with this knowledge of ironsmithing, of agriculture, and they come into Africa and they basically take over much of what is sub-Saharan Africa, from Cameroon, stretching all the way east into Tanzania, Kenya, and coming all the way as far south as Southeast Africa, and developing their kingdoms there. And they develop massive kingdoms. Some of the well-known Bantu kingdoms include the Roswy Empire, the Kingdom of Congo, the Zulu Nation, the Mwena Matapa Kingdom, the Empire of Great Zimbabwe, the Mapungubwe Society, which is the classical civilization of South Africa, by the way, the Mapungubwe Society in modern-day Limpopo. That's a precursor to Great Zimbabwe. And we'll get into all of that with the Ghetto Scholars as we move along, but the Bantus then solidify major kingdoms in Africa through a process of migration and bringing in all kinds of Masonic traditions, stone masonry that they would have learned from ancient Egypt and Kush, and other stone Masonic traditions that they would have learned from various other African societies at the time. So we roll over. A couple of hundreds of years go by, the Bantus are really established, they're wealthy, the Kingdom of Congo is super wealthy, they are trading in all kinds of precious minerals, they're trading in wine, they've got their own currency system, you're using cowrie shells. Bantu peoples are being prosperous. And then a huge cataclysmic event happens that changes the whole entire epistemology of the Bantu peoples as we know them today, and that is the transatlantic slave trade. Now, the transatlantic slave trade, or slavery in general, has been a feature of human history for thousands of years. The Romans have been engaged in slavery, the Persians, the Greeks, everyone has been engaged in slavery. The ancient Egyptians were engaged in slavery. The difference, though, with the transatlantic slave trade is that it is the slave trade that is a cross-continental. So it is a cross-continental, intercontinental enterprise. And it is really the first slave, it is the institution that gave birth to our modern financial system today and our system of capitalism. Capitalism really, or modern day Western capitalism, is largely born out of the slave trade and the subsequent developments that happened as a result of that. A great book to read is, I forget the author, but it's called Slavery and Capitalism, or Capitalism and Slavery. That really gives a great overview on what the whole slave trade and how capitalism, Western European capitalism, came as a result of the labor power that they needed from Africans and the subsequent slavery that took place in a lot of these islands, such as Haiti, such as Cuba, such as Jamaica, to fund many of the projects that the Europeans were engaged in. But that's on a later stage. But the Bantus get involved in that, and the Bantus are really the kind of the heavy receivers of slavery, really in the transatlantic slave trade in Africa. They were the ones who kind of received the heavy brunt of it. There are more Bantu slaves in the Western world than there are of any other African group combined. So you look at Brazil, most Afro-Brazilians are Bantu peoples. You look at Colombia, most Afro-Colombians are a Bantu descended people. You look at Jamaica, most Jamaicans are Bantu descended people. You look at Cubans, most Afro-Cubans, Black Cubans are Bantu descended people. African Americans in the United States, 30% of the African American genome is Bantu, with 60% being, European or native or whatnot. But 30% is a pretty large number, a pretty substantial number. And that forms part of the genome of African American people. So Bantu peoples were really the main ones who received the transatlantic slave trade memo, and they were taken as a result of that. So some of the very key components of Bantu culture includes the Bantu people's philosophy. And the philosophy that encapsulates Bantu people, some of y'all have heard about this. We'll go in about it in a little bit of detail later. But the main philosophical grounding that grounds Bantu people all over the world, whether they know it or not, is this concept of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu has 5 major components. There's Muntu, which is man. Hantu, which is the animals. Or Hantu, time and space. Kintu, which is kin, which is the animals. And I'm forgetting the other, I gotta go back and read this, but there are 5 main components to Ubuntu, and the synthesization of that becomes all my relations. I am because you are. Just like the Native Americans have their saying, all my relations. With Bantu, with Ubuntu, it's I am because we are. And that's with plants, animals, people, and how we navigate towards this. So Bantu peoples, you can find Bantu peoples in several major African nations. They are in South Africa, much of sub-Saharan Africa. South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Angola, Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya, Cameroon, Gabon, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, southern parts of Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Congo Republic, Congo Brazzaville, Congo Kinshasa. You can find them find some Bantu peoples in Madagascar, though they are very small. And then, of course, you have your larger Afro diaspora in the Caribbean islands and in the Western world. So, guys, I hope that was a fairly bare bones, not a in-depth analysis of the Bantu peoples. I'm gonna make more of these kinds of videos and really kind of put that in there and give you guys a proper grounding on who exactly the Bantu peoples are, the worldview, the epistemology. We'll talk about the Bantu peoples in retrospect to world history, what happened in world history during the time, and really figure out and piece together the missing dots, the last missing pages of world history. Because I honestly do believe that us not knowing who we are is the fact that we don't know who the Bantu peoples are. And the Bantu peoples are the final missing pieces for us to put together the human project and to put together the human story and know exactly who we are, where we come from, what our metaphysical realities are and what our cosmic destiny is. Within Bantu philosophy, destiny is a huge part of the philosophical groundwork. Every single person or every single Bantu person is born with a destiny, and your name that you are given at your birth as a Bantu person, if you're given a Bantu name, that name is linked with the destiny that you are going to fulfill and the purpose you're going to fulfill later on in your life. So guys, if you really like this video, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I'm going to be releasing more videos and give you guys more awesome content. And yeah, share this far and wide. Tell your friends, tell your family members, tell this and this, tell that, let them know that the peoples, Abantu, the peoples, have arrived. It's your boy, Bongo, Ghetto Scholars. We keeping it scholastic, but ghetto at the same time. Away!